When I'm in the technical field, I work with computers and tablets and smartphones. And when a computer, tablet, or smartphone starts freezing up or running slow, sometimes a reboot is necessary to get it functioning again. A reboot is different from a reset. A reboot just powers down the device and then restarts it, kind of refreshing the memory and things like that. And usually we'll get up and running again. But sometimes that's not enough. And what's needed is a full reset. And a reset is when you restore the device back to the manufacturer's default settings. It's just as though you just bought it out of the store. Well, there's a crisis facing us today that a reboot simply won't be enough. We need a complete factory reset. And the crisis I'm talking about is an identity crisis. On June 1st of last year, 2022, a documentary was released, and it was entitled, "What is a Woman?" The answer biblically and biologically is a female adult human. However, most of the people who were asked replied with subjective, abstract descriptions which never identified a definitive answer. It looks like we're beyond the point where a reboot would help. We need a reset. Where we are today, people are confused about their identity, and not just their identity of who I am, no, an identity of what I am physiologically, biologically, psychologically. That's a problem. What is an identity? Identity refers to a person's name and other facts about who they are, who or what they are. What is the identity of a woman? Make it really clear: a female adult human. That is a woman. Well, what is a female? According to Webster's online dictionary, a female is the sex that typically has the capacity to bear young or produce eggs. But then, over time, the dictionary has added this: having a gender identity that's the opposite of a male. In the article where I got this information from, it adds that a female is a woman. Wait, let me say this. Put your seatbelt on for a moment. It says a female is a woman, correct. But it says trans-identifying males are not female. However, according to trans activists, men can be women. Nope, I didn't stutter or stammer. That's what they're saying. According to trans activists, men can be women. Did you know there are alternative spellings for the word woman, W-O-M-A-N? One is spelled W-O-M-X-N for woman, and the plural is W-O-M-Y-N for women. This has been in use since the 1970s. And why? To avoid perceived sexism in the standard spelling, which contains the word man. Wait, what? Is this madness? What in the world? Well, how did we get here? Well, the Greeks, from which our Western civilization is based on, had some interesting ideas about life. I want to prepare you to realize we did not start the way we are because we had a good idea. No, people long before us had good or evil ideas, and depending upon which side or the other or mixture of them came about, we are the result or the product of that. Well, back in the way back in the day, among the Greeks, they had some different ideas about the human body and how we could act. And for them, it was normal, acceptable behavior. Please understand this. What I'm going to tell you is their normal, acceptable behavior. which they have since passed on to us, and we were just resisting and rejecting some of that normal, acceptable behavior. Like the Greeks thought the human body was beautiful from top to bottom, and I agree. But they thought it was like that without clothes and should be shown this way without shame or embarrassment. Go around. Why do you need clothes? Maybe because God told the first man and woman, because you diverted from the instructions I've given you, one of the first things you need to do is cover up now. The Greeks didn't think anything really wrong with men sodomizing other men, that is, being practicing homosexual behavior, if they chose to do so. For the honor of the wife and the horniness of the husband, it was an acceptable practice for a husband to have sexual relations outside of the home with a woman or a man if they chose to, and then return home to the wife and family like nothing out of the ordinary has taken place. This was normal and acceptable behavior then. These and other perverted practices were packaged and propagated by three dead guys. That's what I call them. Socrates, Aristocles, which we know better as Plato, and Aristotle. Socrates was the first of the great Greek philosophers. He's considered by many to be the founder of Western philosophy. Then there's Aristocles. Again, we know him better as Plato. He was a student of Socrates, and he wrote many dialogues using Socrates as a major character. A dialogue is where you're writing something and it's a teacher and a student having a conversation. Socrates also founded the world's first university. He called it the Academy. Aristotle was a student of Plato. He was a philosopher and scientist, and he was interested in the physical world, and he was teacher to a well-known global figure whose name is Alexander the Great. So how did we get to where we are? Plato was born about 400 years before Messiah Yeshua. He wrote about 30 books and founded the world's first university, which I said called the Academy. For Plato, erotic passion was a spiritual force that helps us find our true selves within the deepest human bond. Hogwash. Plato celebrated eroticism and homosexuality. Plato's mentor and teacher, Socrates, was executed. He was made to drink a poison made from hemlock for corrupting the morals of young people. Back then, they had certain standards, and Socrates was coming up with some ideas challenging those standards. Over time, his teachings won over, passed on to Plato, who met with some resistance because he feared being persecuted for sharing the same ideas as Socrates. He hid his own philosophy at that time, but it's come out since then. Now, in case you're wondering what this has to do with identity crisis and the question, what is a woman? I'll tell you. Proverbs 23:7, the first part of the verse reads to us that as a man, and I say, or woman, thinks in his heart, so is he. What does this mean? It means that what a person believes will be reflected in their behavior. What's in the head will come out through the hands because it's coming through the heart. Out of the abundance of the mouth, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The roots, or our roots of Western civilization, are based on ancient Greece and Roman practices and philosophy, which in turn are built on the foundations laid in ancient Egypt, which is also really known as Mitzrayim, and Mesopotamia. Remember, way back when, you get back to Mesopotamia, you get to talking about a guy named Nimrod. Nimrod was a mighty warrior before Yahweh. Not that he was working for him, but he was in opposition to him. Long time ago, people decided they weren't going to follow Yahweh's instructions, directions, and his wisdom. And so there was this great big divide. And for some reason, it seems as though evil people have better what do you call it? The marketing and advertising than the saints. We need to get on the ball here because we need to promote by our lifestyle, not only our lip service, how God expects us to live, and to show people that, yes, this is a better way of life, not only for us, but for all those in our sphere of influence. Western civilization's current shape as we have it today was formed in medieval Europe because there were a lot of changes going on. We got where we are culturally, politically, and religiously by adopting, adapting, and assimilating the Greek philosophy and practice of life. Those perverse things I was telling you about, if you read the papers today, if you watch YouTube videos, if you're paying attention to what's going on in our educational systems, you're seeing all of this come around now and being legalized. So where do we go from here? We need to review what Yahweh says about a woman, because that's our focus. What is a woman, or the profile of a woman? In so doing, we'll renew our mind to the Creator's way of thinking. So let's look at the profile of a woman. A woman, which is a female adult human, was built or designed to bear the image and likeness of Yahweh, the God who created her, with the potential to replicate or produce the image and likeness over and over again, which is through childbirth. A woman is designed to complement man and help rule over the heavens and the earth that Yahweh, our God, created. Now, my answer and response is based on the biblical account of what Yahweh, the God who created and filled the heavens and the earth, what he did. In Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 and 27, read along with me or listen. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over all the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man, or humankind, in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. I want to make something perfectly clear. Yahweh made humanity binary, two ways, one way or the other way. It's kind of like in the computer world. Computers only understand zeros and ones. You can't put a 2 in there, a 3, a 7, a 9. Nope. A computer can only understand 0 or 1. How can we tell the difference when it comes to male and female, though? What's a man? What's a woman? Well, I want to make it really clear, but respectful, because I don't know the full breadth of the audience today. But the male is the one who produces and plants a human seed. The female is the one who can receive and release the fruit of a human seed. Your sex is what determines whether you are male or female. If you're a male, you're a man. If you're female, you're a woman. Well, what about gender? We know that you can be male or female physically, but what about your gender? Because they say your sex is what's between your legs, but your gender is what's in your head. Well, let me clarify this. Your gender is how we express what your sex is. Not what you want it to be, what you think it should be, what you'd like it to be, but what it is. Your sex is first identified at birth by whether or not you have male or female reproductive parts. Quite simple. That's how it's done, by design, not assignment, but by design. Secondly, the bone structure of the pelvis, the skull, and the rib cage also identifies whether you are male or female. So if there's no flesh on your body, I can still tell, well, a forensic researcher can still tell whether this was male or female. And of course, there is the blood, because the life is in the blood. Why is there so much confusion over this? Because trusted sources like dictionaries are modifying or changing definitions about male and female. And that's not right. It's sad. I know that words may change over time. Associations of words may change over time, but let me give a quick example. Are you familiar with something called money? Money is basically the coin or currency that we use to buy goods, products, and services. Sometimes when referring to money, a person may say, I could use a little more bread, or hey, can you slide me a little cheddar? Those are euphemisms or other terms that were referring to money. But guess what? If you said you needed a little bread and I gave you a couple of slices of my Sara Lee, you'd be a little concerned because you know that's not what you're talking about. Even though I use another term, that doesn't make it the other term that I'm using. I know what money is. Why all this confusion? Because our universities, our colleges, and elementary through high school educational system are exposing and expressing an anti-biblical understanding of God's purpose and plan expressly presented in the Bible about men and women, male and females. They're doing that. They're telling children, well, you know, you look like a girl, but are you a girl? You're able to reproduce, but you might actually be a man in your head. So it's okay if you want to do man things. One young girl I heard about recently ran home crying to her mother. She was an elementary school girl, less than the third or fourth grade. And she was crying. She says, Mommy, I could turn into a boy. Mother was really upset about it. But the reality and the fact is, the parents had no idea this was being presented in the classroom. And then you have men dressing up like women and doing their drag shows. Say, well, I look like a man. I'm built like a man. I got all of the strength of a man, but I'm a womb man. No, you don't have a womb, so you can't be a womb man. It doesn't work that way. But children who are highly impressionable up through the ages of their middle to late teenage years are being confused. Did you know that the majority of children, and I mean children under the age of 18, even under 12, they're trying to figure out if they're born a boy, if they're really a boy or a girl, or if they're born a girl, if they're a boy or not. Other trans people are saying, oh, that's how you feel. I felt that same way. And this means you really are. Wait a minute. Why don't you talk to a woman? How do you feel? Well, I feel like this. And sometimes I felt like that. Or talk to a man. I feel like this, or I feel like that. You just because you feel some way in your mind doesn't change what you are. And no amount of surgery, no amount of medication, no amount of anything will change what God has designed you to be. As a matter of fact, I almost wish I could be standing at the judgment when some guy who had himself surgically transitioned, or a woman who had herself surgically transitioned into what appears to be a man, stands before God, wondering where'd all their paid for parts go. God says, no, I'm looking at everybody the way I made them. And that's how it works. Why so much confusion? Because people, including believers, have been deceived into believing there are no absolutes. That's not possible. Why? Because if there are no absolutes, that would be an absolute. There are absolutes, but what they're saying is not right. As our series continues, we're going to take a look at the profiles of a wife and the profile of a mother. Why do we need to look at this? Because if someone asks you the question, what is a woman? I want you to be able to tell them with clarity what a woman is and why you believe that way. My brothers and my sisters, at this point in our culture, I don't think a reboot is enough. We need to do a reset using the word of God to renew not only our minds, but present our beliefs compellingly to those that are in our sphere of influence. Until